Welcome back to the Investor Professor podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 156. On today's episode, we're going to talk about quitting day, but mainly we're going to discuss this bumpy January that we find ourselves in with the stock market. December was a little bumpy. January's been bumpy. We'll talk about what's going on, and we'll also talk about developing an investment thesis and how you can do a little bit of research to really believe in the companies that you're investing in and not get spooked when they start bouncing around. So get your mind right and let's get to work.
You dropped this.
Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. Episode 156, the real episode 156. So last episode, I said it was episode 156. It was actually episode 155. Starting to lose count, which I don't know. Is that a good thing? I don't know. So I named this episode Quitters Day because the second Friday in January is known as National Quitters Day, because this is when most people give up on their goals and resolutions, which I find absolutely incredible that it's only been like 10 days. So if somebody said, I'm going to walk around the block every day, or every other day, or I'm not going to eat as much sugar, I'm going to do push-ups, I'm going to save money, whatever their resolution was or goal was, they have already given up on it, which I think is, just quite sad. Like, Quitters Day was not something that I was necessarily aware of until the last couple of days, and it just kind of shocked me, honestly. So, but that's not this group. That is not this group. We're not quitting after 10 days. We are pressing forward just like we do every single year, and we are looking ahead. So whatever goals you set for yourself, do not be like everybody else, and make sure you stay on track. So you should actually just be, instead of the people quitting, you should just be getting started. Like, you should just be kind of getting into the groove of whatever it is you chose, whatever goals you chose for yourself. So especially if it's an investing goal, right? And we encourage here mental, physical, financial goals. Whatever you chose to do, you should be on that path. So for what that's worth. So we look across the investment landscape, and man, January not looking great. It's not looking great. We had a great 2023, great 2024, and I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, I've been preparing this audience, my clients. I mean, when you look at having two really good years back to back, I mean, the average return the next year it hasn't been horrible, but it also hasn't been great. I mean, you have to have some time to digest the gains of the market. And right now you see this tug of war happening between the economic data that's coming out and then how companies are reporting. So on Friday, we got the U.S. jobs number, and the market gets crushed when this number comes out. And it's so interesting because the market was expecting like 150,000 new jobs in December, and the number was actually like 256, meaning that more people got hired than was expected. So in your mind, you would be thinking that's a good thing, right? There's more people going to work. There's more people that got jobs, which means those individuals who got those jobs can now spend money, right? At a lot of S&P 500 companies, they're going to be able to spend that income, which is going to be more profits for those companies. So jobs should be a good thing. People having jobs is a very good thing. It also meant that the unemployment rate ticked down to 4.1%. So again, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to have a recession if you have the unemployment low and everybody is employed and they're able to spend money. But the market did not have that same reaction. The market basically sold off on Friday on the expectation that the Fed is not going to be able to cut interest rates further. And so that's what you saw happen on Friday. That's why the market had such a bad reaction, is because all the algorithms and all the computer traders who trade off of, basing stock prices based on Fed cuts, they basically had to reprice the price of stocks and say, hey, the Fed is probably not going to lower rates as much as we thought. And so you saw that repricing happen on Friday, and it happens in a very violent way. But to me, personal opinion here, but to me, it's a very short-sighted thing, because in the end, it shows that the economy is strong, people are employed, and those people are going to be able to buy things. They're going to be able to pay their credit card bills. They're going to be able to pay their car loans. They're going to be able to pay their house, their mortgages. And so you want individuals to be employed, and you want them to be able to make their payments. So short term, the market doesn't like it. Long term, it should work out just fine, because companies' earnings are going to be better. And speaking of earnings, we're about to get into earnings season this week. We have the banks start reporting. You don't see the big tech companies and the like. They don't start reporting until late January. But we do get into earnings season here. So it's all going to culminate. We're going to have the presidential inauguration, and we're going to have Trump's first 100 days, and we're going to have companies start to report. So over the next couple of months, it could be a little choppy, as we like to say here. So you're going to have to kind of pick your spots. This is when, you look at the companies, and again, we've talked about this for years, but having companies that you're interested in investing in and making that list and thinking to yourself, okay, who do I want to add to if the prices come down? And the prices have started to come down. So we're currently, it's not a lot, but we're currently negative for the year on the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, just by a little bit. But we call this kind of a sideways market. So a sideways market is where, you get a good day, market rallies, a couple days later, it sells off. A couple days later, it goes up. It just kind of sloshes around in the same spot. And so there really is no direction. You don't know if the market's going to go up. You don't know if the market's going to go down. And so this is when being comfortable with the names that you are invested in is so key. Knowing what you own and being in companies that you're excited about owning is key. So one of the names I'm going to bring up here is Palantir. So Palantir was up 310% over the past year, and which means it was at $16 at this time last year. Right now it's at $67. So Palantir's had a great run. Defense contractor, AI, they're doing it all. And this is a company, full disclosure, I really like. I own it personally, and I own it at, this is a crazy number, but I own it at $9.45. So this is easy for me to say coming from somebody with such a low cost basis, but we'll get to that here in a minute. This is a company that I'm also looking to add to. So I am going to add to my Palantir stake. And I want you to go watch, and I just want to talk to you about how I build out these theses where I'm looking at Palantir. I like what they're doing. I like the leadership of the company. I like, all the management people that they have. It's the reason that I bought it when it was so low. I believe I talked about it on the podcast years ago, where I looked at the government contracts that they had, and the stock was down to $9. And I was like, man, the defense contracts that they have means that this company is not going to go bankrupt. And this was in 2022 when the market was terrible and everything had come way down. And I'm looking at them going, well, they're not going to go bankrupt. They have enough defense contracting, defense contracts to stay afloat. And so the negative on them then was that they were paying their employees with stock. And the fact of the matter is that if those employees performed and the company did well, they would be well compensated, and it saved Palantir the cash because they weren't having to actually pay those employees with cash. So anyways, I liked kind of what they were doing then. I still like the leadership team. The more I read about the stuff that they're doing, the government clearance that they have, the way that they're able to use AI to help companies mine through all the data that they have, that is they call it data exhaust, where companies have all this data. Think about all the data that companies collect, right? Just if you think like of Target or Walmart, just all the transactions that they have, just the sheer amount of data that's out there. How do you go through all that? How do you possibly comb through all the data that you're collecting? Well, a company like Palantir helps you. So I'm looking at them. I'm going through all the companies that I own all the time. I'm looking at all the headline news and all that. So Palantir, if you watch the Army Navy game, they showed a commercial, and I want you to go watch this commercial. It's on YouTube. You can type in Palantir drone ad. You can type it. The name of the commercial is The Future of Warfare. But they're showing these battleships, and they shoot out these drones that they can control, that Palantir can control. They don't use GPS, which gets taken away in most, warfare situations. And so they're controlling these drones, and they can basically take out targets. And so then I'm thinking, so this is how my mind works. I'm like, all right, so they got these drones. I'm like, who's making the drones? Because I know Palantir isn't making the drones. So I go down that rabbit hole, and I find this company called RCAT, because Palantir, and the symbol on that is RCAT, RCAT Holdings. And so I go find them, and so they just signed a deal with Palantir a couple weeks ago, literally a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And so the stock spikes up to $15. And on Friday, it was down 15%. So it was back down to $10. But I'm looking at this. I'm looking at interviews with the CEO. I'm looking at the quantitative data, which is the actual financial data of the company, which is right now it's horrible. The company's financials are not great. But then I go look at the qualitative data. And this is where I feel like over most financial people, I probably have an edge. So I go look at the qualitative data. I go look at who's running the company. I go look at the CEO. I look at, videos of him, seeing interviews. I see that they're doing this roll-up strategy of all these little drone companies. I see that they get a military contract that's worth almost half the value of the entire company. And so I look at this, I'm going, $10, huh? Another $10 stock, but now they have this partnership with Palantir, where Palantir is going to install their AI software onto these drones. This is how they're going to be able to control them. I'm like, man, so a lot of these companies, we talked about Rivian a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about Rivian and the partnership that they have with Amazon, and the fact that Amazon owns 158 million shares of Rivian. Rivian's now, $13. And so when you look at these companies, you can't just look at, yes, it's important to look at, where they've been, all that stuff, but not about the past, but about what is in their future and what is going to be different about their future than was different about their past. And if you can do that, and you can kind of figure out some investment thesis based on that, and it just kind of starts to come together. And so I'm looking at RCAT. I haven't made an investment yet. Always full disclosure. But I'm leaning towards it. I don't know. Personally, I probably will, but this one is probably a much longer, I don't know. You're going to have to be willing to own this thing for like 3 to 5 years, I would think, because they're rolling up other drone companies, building a much bigger drone company to compete with like somebody like AirVironment, which is their symbol's AV. And so, but I just kind of want you to see what it takes to like build out an investment thesis and kind of figure out like what's going on, where's the future of things going, and how do these partnerships come together. And so if you look at the New York Times yesterday, there was an article about Elon Musk. And let me see if I can find it real quick. And it was about basically who are the people in Elon Musk's circle. And I have been looking at different companies, and we talked about this when I was with Cameron. We talked about this, but I'm looking at like, who does Elon Musk know? Who's he connected to? The companies that he's working with, Doge to cut government costs. I mean, when you look at old school like defense contractors, the Lockheed Martins of the world, and you look at them trying to compete with the Palantir, who's young and nimble and costs a lot less. I think the future for some of these companies is going to be pretty bright, and I'm going to use this kind of market sloshing around, if we have a little bit of a pullback here, I'm going to use that. Like Palantir right now at after hours, it's at 66.77. But my goodness, a month ago it was at 80 or 82 actually. So it's already down 7% for the month. It's down 13% for the year already. And, is it going to go lower? Maybe, but it's one of those where I just think about dollar cost averaging into it, buying shares periodically. And you will go do your own research. As always, this is for entertainment purposes only. Do your own research, all of those things. Got to get the disclosures out there. Do your own research, but when you go look at all the negatives on Palantir, it's going to tell you that it's expensive, and it is expensive based on the valuation, all of those things. It is definitely an expensive stock if you're going to value it just plainly on valuation and those things. But here's what I will tell you: all the good investments that I've missed, all the good investments that I've made, at some point they looked expensive. Amazon looked expensive. Google looked expensive. Apple, all the Magnificent Seven, they all looked expensive. And so, you just have to know that going in. But if you like the thesis of the company, and this is where it comes down to, at the end of the day, number one, you have to understand the companies that you invest in. You have to understand how they make money. And you have to believe in what they're doing. And you have to believe in, okay, am I going to commit to this company? Is this an investment that I'm willing to commit to? And if it goes down, would I want to buy more of that company because I believe in what they're doing? And so I look at some of these companies, and for me, it's not about holding them for 5 months. It's about holding them for 5 to 10 years, if not longer, because there's just not that many good companies to invest in. And when you really start doing research on companies, you start to figure out pretty quickly that there are not that many good companies to invest in. There are not just Costco's, different investments like Costco or, some of the big, the companies that we've discussed. There's just not that many out there. And so when you find a good company, you have to lean in a little bit, and it could be scary, but you got to lean in and you got to commit, and you have to, set aside money every single month. And you have to do all of these things to give yourself the opportunity to invest in them. Because if the market isn't as good, there's still opportunities, and you have to think about when the market comes better. And I know we're in a good market. The economy's good right now, but it's not always going to be that way. And so when it's summer, we have to think about winter. And when it's winter, we have to think about summer. And so we're never too high. We're never too low. But we're thinking about how do we compound wealth over a long period of time? How do we be long-term greedy and be willing to sacrifice something today to have more later on? And so that's kind of really the heart of it. So look at the companies that you own, the investments that you've made, and ask yourself, do you really like the company? Would you still invest in that company today? Do you still like the company? And so, going through your stocks and thinking about those things, has something changed? It's okay to change your mind, by the way. That is something that investors also have trouble with. That they make an investment, and all of a sudden, something changes, and they don't necessarily want to change. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. It's okay to, change your mind on a company if the thesis has changed and there's something different, and you factor that in. You look at like the weight loss drugs and how they've impacted snack foods, for example. So you look at Pepsi, and you look at Hershey's, and you look at, Hershey's kind of a two-pronger there. It's not only the weight loss drugs, but it's also the price of cocoa beans has skyrocketed. So their input costs are much higher. So you have to analyze those things and think, okay, have things changed? So you look at that, you come up with your investment thesis, and then the hard part, you got to commit to it. You got to commit to it. Just like you got to commit to the goals you made for yourself this year. You're committing to yourself. You're committing to yourself, your family, all of those good things. So we'll leave it there for this first episode of 2025. As always, don't mistake activity for achievement, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.